The Locked On Podcast Network presents the NBA Big 3 in 30. The 3 biggest stories in the NBA from our local experts at the Locked On Podcast Network. We bring you the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 30 minutes. The NBA Big 3 in 30 starts now with the biggest story in the NBA.
Jimmy Butler returned to Miami on Tuesday night, but it was the team he left behind that was the story of the night.
You are Locked On Heat, your daily Miami Heat podcast.
The Heat beat the Warriors in the Jimmy Butler return game. Look, David, I think players could talk about this just being another game, no emotions, just want to go out there and treat this just like anything else. It is clear to me in this game that the Heat took this one personally, especially Bam Adebayo, who outscored Jimmy 23-11 and was matched up on him for most of the night. And then being at the arena for this, I haven't felt that alive since Game 7 of the 2023 Eastern Conference Finals. I really thought about it. I was like, when was the last time I felt like a game had this much riding on it? And I had to go back to Game 7 against the Celtics in 2023 in the Eastern Conference Finals. Just winner take all, right? And obviously that was a very different context. That the winner of that went to the NBA Finals. But in this game, it just felt, yeah, this is the one chance you get to play Jimmy Butler in this context with him coming back home, with the emotions still being very raw. Yeah. And it just felt like, yeah, you're not winning a trip to the finals, but you are playing and competing for bragging rights. And I think that was palpable in the arena. And I think that the Heat players and their team, they said all the right things. They said it was just another game and all these things. But I don't buy it because I watched that team play. They were more locked in than I've ever seen them played all season long.
This is probably the best game of the season. And I think from an emotional standpoint, it was clear that they were heavily invested in making sure that they won this game and making a statement to Jimmy that he made a mistake, that they're angry at him, that they're disappointed in his behavior, that he let them down. And I think that's fair. And what are players and adult men going to say in this kind, especially athletes who are, prompted almost constantly to put up a front and put up a facade of, no, these things don't bother me. How many times have we heard it's a business as they shrug off the fact that this team got traded or a team traded them? And we've heard later on stories about players saying, yeah, it was hard. It was difficult, as they were going about their daily business. And all of a sudden they get a call from their agent or somebody, or they find out on ESPN that they've been traded. Like these kinds of things are disappointing.
Luka cried, when he found out, it was, and so did every Dallas Mavericks fan, but it's that strips away the facade, to your point, of this is only a business. If all of these players react the way that they react, and that's fine. We shouldn't expect them to be robots at the same time either. But the ability to then harness those emotions and then deploy them and use them to your advantage, that to me is what was impressive from the Heat tonight.
Yeah, it was. I was not expecting this. I really thought going into this game, and I know that the Warriors were without Steph Curry, and we should add that is an incredible caveat.
Whatever,
there.
I don't care.
Okay. Regardless,
it's right.
Miami played a phenomenal game.
They did.
It does matter. Like in terms of the final outcome, who knows what it would have been like. But in terms of Miami's approach and how they were focused, I have not seen this team with this kind of laser-like precision and ability and just the emotional weight of everything, just being able to your point, harness and be able to use it as constructively and effectively as they did tonight. It was an impressive showing. And even when Golden State cut what was a sizable lead down to single digits,
20-8.
Miami found a way to
lead to 8 at the end of the third quarter, and then they go on that little spurt.
Yes, and Davion Mitchell, Bam Adebayo, Andrew Wiggins, Tyler Hero, like they all found ways to step up in different ways, and it was really impressive to see a team that has just thrown away a lot of games. Like during this 10-game losing streak, they found new ways to lose almost on every occasion, and it just kind of added up and added up. And we talked about this following the last win over the Charlotte Hornets. Yes, it's the lowly Hornets. I get it. But the lowly Hornets, they had contributed to Miami's 10-game losing streak. And Miami kind of reignited something during that win, figuring out how to win. Without that win against the Hornets, I don't know that they're able to win tonight. If they lost again to the Hornets, they probably would have just said, oh, we can't come back from this. But instead, they found a way at every opportunity to push Golden State, to find a way to kind of distance themselves, to add to a lead that was shrinking, and then just pile on and pile on. An incredible performance for this Miami Heat team. I'm really impressed.
And every time they would go a couple of possessions, they managed, and maybe Golden State would score once or twice and start cutting into that. Miami every time managed to get that relief bucket, whether it was Tyler Hero or Andrew Wiggins, maybe Davion Mitchell creating a steal and score in transition or whatever it was. And that was what was really missing during the 10-game losing streak, is like that would just snowball. It'd be, instead of 2 empty possessions, it would be 3, 4, 5, 6, and they would just be out of sorts completely. And in this game, they just found ways against, no Steph Curry, a very good Warriors defense. A very good Warriors defense for the season. And they didn't play well in this game, but you got to give a lot of credit to the Miami Heat for they could have come out flat. They could have done the whole, we're too we're too revved up on the emotions and we got to try to bring it all the way down and then come out flat. And I asked Eric Spoelstra about this after the game. I said, is that a skill to be able to kind of figure this out with the emotions, acknowledging that it's there and figuring out what it goes? And he even said, look, I think that you have to toe the line. You have to, it's a razor's edge of, if you're too emotional, you're kind of rabid and out of sorts and uncontrolled. And then if you try to dial it back too much, you come out flat. And they figured out a way to kind of walk that line the right way. On the flip side, I thought Jimmy Butler, I was a little surprised by his performance in this game, but maybe I shouldn't have been. Because Jimmy's whole thing always is, I'm too cool for school. And he came out a little too cool for school. Oh, this game doesn't matter, and I'm watching the tribute video, and that's kind of nice and whatever. And then, he just kind of does the thing that Heat fans have seen him do when he's not totally engaged, which is pass up open shots, stand in the corner. He took 12 shots in this game, right? Yeah, 12 shots. Moses Moody took 13. Brandon Podziemski took 16. Jonathan Kuminga, who isn't even playing well lately, took 10 shots in this game, almost as much as Jimmy Butler. And this is a very similar trend to the stuff that we used to complain about when Jimmy Butler was in Miami. I'm not saying it was a bad trade. I'm not trying to make any big takeaways from it, but this was how we were used to seeing Jimmy Butler play in Kaseya Center.
Yeah, it's not the macro view. It's the fact that he was so out of sorts on a night when you probably expected him, and I know I certainly did, to be a lot more focused. I thought he was going to be matching Miami's energy, or at least what we saw from Miami tonight. I didn't think Miami was capable of this. So they've impressed me. But to the flip side of that, Jimmy came out a lot flatter than I thought he would, because I thought he would want to make a statement. Like, he would want to show him, you messed up. And he's used this. He's like,
I thought it was going to be like Minnesota Timberwolves practice Jimmy Butler. That's what I was expecting. Maybe not 40 points, not Michael Jordan against the Milwaukee Bucks Jimmy Butler, but like 24 points, 15 rebounds, like 12 assists,
key
just
possessions,
like
key
4 steals.
Yeah, to your question to Eric Spoelstra, like, Jimmy has made a career of harnessing those emotions. He fuels that. I've made the point before, and maybe I've belabored it a little bit too much, but like, players need something to motivate them over the course of an 82-game season, and even in the playoffs. And it's all about slights and perceived slights. Like, I know maybe this is just kind of framing it, and with Michael Jordan, The Last Dance, and everybody remembers how it became obvious how much he needed something to just make him the fearful assassin that he was.
Right.
And just to kind of motivate him. It's like, oh, you didn't say good morning, or you said good morning to me the wrong way. Well, guess what? I'm going to drop 40 on you. Like, you couldn't win, but that's what he does. And Jimmy has followed that same path. Like, he hasn't always been the best regular season player, because the regular season doesn't always matter to him. And it's not always so easy to kind of manufacture these perceived slights in order to use that as fuel. But he's always found motivation, especially on a night like tonight. You figured he would want to show up Pat, that he'd want to show up the whole team, that he'd have something to bark at, that he'd yell at Bam Adebayo, that he'd look over at Spo and said, you go use Tyler over me, etc. Like, we didn't see any of that. He looked humbled. He looked kind of shaken. He looked like he was kind of scared of the moment.
I think he shut down. I think he shut down the emotions, right? It's the Heat finally, the thing I've been begging them to do, let the emotions in, feel it, feel your pain, feel something, bleed your own blood. It's okay. And then harness it, use it. And Jimmy Butler didn't. Jimmy Butler said, I'm going to shut everything off. I'm not going to feel the weight of this moment. And and I don't even necessarily blame him for that. That's a totally human thing that you don't want to be encountering right now because of everything and how all of it went down.
March Madness is here, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories, and even who's cutting down the nets. With tournament games happening almost every day, there's always something exciting to bet on. The FanDuel app is simple to use, and when I win, I get paid instantly. No waiting around. You can also look at some futures, like for Major League Baseball. How about that? The most popular future bet in all of Major League Baseball. The Cincinnati Reds to hit their over on the win total. FanDuel has the Reds over under 79.5. My producer would like to mention that he has smashed this over, FYI. So visit FanDuel.com and get in on the college hoop action all tournament long.
The Oklahoma City Thunder get win number 60 by responding to a massive Sacramento Kings third quarter run.
You are Locked On Thunder, your daily Oklahoma City Thunder podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
The big picture of just this season at large matters when you're talking about this individual game. Because it's thoroughly impressive that this team already has 60 wins. It's thoroughly impressive that this team has already clinched the number 1 overall seed. And the context behind it matters more than the third quarter run that we will get to. Before the season began, a lot of people picked the Thunder to be the best team in the West. You know, from just a pure talent standpoint, from a mixture of talent coupled with who amongst the most talented teams do you expect to take the regular season the most seriously, and on down the line. So they were a popular pick to be in this spot. Now, nobody went as far as to say that they would lap the field, right? Nobody went as far as to say that they'd be the best team in the NBA. Nobody went as far as to say that before the calendar turns to April, the 1 seed will be decided in the middle of March. It was whenever they clinched it for the number 1 overall seed. And especially no one would have said that if you got the information that Chet Holmgren would be out from November 10th to February 7th. If you've got the information that Isaiah Hartenstein would miss the first 20 games of the season. If you had the information that Kenrich and Jay will start on the shelf. If you had the information that during even this stretch, down the home stretch of the season, you've been playing games without Chet. You've been playing games without J-Dub. You've been playing games without key pieces, and yet you keep on winning. And so I think that sometimes when you're just so narrowly focused on the day-to-day, the here and now, and the why that each individual game is won, you need to take a step back and look upon the context of how everything's stacked together, how it's all been strung together over the course of this regular season. Because I think that sometimes the Thunder get the wrong end of, well, this team was supposed to be number 1 overall seed. What's the big deal? Yeah, but you would have never picked them to be the number 1 overall seed if you knew all the context I just gave you when you were doing your season preview in the middle of October. You would have never picked this to happen. And tonight embodied all of that, where you go on the road against the Kings team fighting for their lives, however meekly you believe that they're fighting for the play-in tournament, but fighting for their lives, only down Malik Monk, who's a big deal, but one player's gone at this time of the year. You take that as a huge win. Meanwhile, the Thunder don't have Jalen Williams, J-Dub. They don't have Cason Wallace. They don't have Aaron Wiggins. They don't have Ousmane Dieng, but like 3 very important rotational pieces. And yet they get a lopsided victory. We are able to raise the victory flagler at the end on the road after a barrage by Sacramento in that third quarter, where they slice a 25-point lead within single digits, and they're feeling good. And they're shooting the lights out of the gym. And Shea's having an off night to that point and still didn't play his very best, right? But it was still a good game. And you're at home and the crowd's into it, trying to propel you to a win. And it just didn't matter. Because what we've seen this entire season in various degrees, in various ways, is that this Thunder team is going to respond. I think that sometimes you look at how good they are, and from the outside looking in, you just assume, well, you know, they're a young team that's taking it more seriously than everybody else, and they're getting rewarded for it. They're lapping the field because they're the only ones trying, and discarding the adversity, the true blue adversity that they've gone through. And they went through tonight. Other NBA teams would have folded in that third quarter. Other NBA teams would have folded whenever Chet Holmgren broke his hip. Think of how many teams right now in the Western Conference are using injury excuses or are talking about how, yeah, you know, it hasn't been the best regular season, but we're going to turn it on in the playoffs. Don't worry about us. You know, in the playoffs, lights are bright. We're going to get there. The Thunder would have had those same excuses. And for a team who was picked, you know, granted, they were picked by many to be the 1 seed again. They were picked by many to be the 1 seed again in the same scope of how they were the 1 seed last year, where they didn't get the 1 seed till the last day of the season, in large part due to tiebreaker, in large part due to Hail Mary in San Antonio. But they've lapped the field. And they've taken all of that adversity and they've responded to it. They responded to in-game adversity tonight. They responded to season-long adversity throughout the year to get to this point. You know, how crazy is it that on February 7th was the first time that Chet Holmgren and Isaiah Hartenstein were able to step on the floor together? And your most played lineup, 4-man lineup, Shea, J-Dub, Chet, Hartenstein. A lineup you didn't even have available to you until a little over a month ago. And oh yeah, by the way, in this tad bit over a month stretch, Chet's been resting back-to-backs. Guys have been in and out of the lineup. And it's still up there as your most played lineup. Partly that's due to Mark's, you know, wants and strategy of, you know, rotating lineups and making sure that you've left no stone unturned. Part of that's due to everyone's been in and out to where you can't have a fastball lineup, so to say, or a lineup that you've like built up a huge lead on a group that again was not together until a little over a month ago. But the key part about it is, while it does hurt the Thunder to not have Wiggins and Wallace and J-Dub tonight, they are top to bottom the best team in the NBA. They're top to bottom the most talented and the deepest team in the NBA, and they win like they are. They win as such. And so I just find it fascinating how good this team is. And you will look back on this team as the best team in Thunder history. And you don't want to not embrace, not enjoy, not relish, not savor these moments the way you should. Because one day this will end. Now, the end is not in sight because of how young these guys are, because of how many picks that they have, because of the way that they've strategized and set themselves up to keep all these guys, even with the new CBA. The end is not in sight, but one day the end will come. And in 20 years from now, this will be the best team in Thunder history. And you will have wished that you spent more time enjoying it and knowing that you're in the good old days. You're in the good old days right now. Right this second. And I think that there's partly a brush off that we've talked about. There's partly even from people who are acknowledging how good they are, and now we're speaking internally with like local fans and fans who are all around the world that love this team and that they know how good this team is and they watch this team every night. Even some of you are watching this team with a little bit of a guarded approach of like, well, you know, what about May and June? Let May and June be May and June, right? Let May and June be May and June. This team deserves all the accolades, all the respect, all the hype, all the flowers, all the acknowledgement, all the appreciation for what they've done. Because again, this is the best it's going to get. I mean, it really is. You can put together hypotheticals of how good this team would have been if they were all healthy and all able to play all 82 games. But this is what NBA teams deal with. And how you respond to these injuries that the cards they've been dealt this year, how you respond to that is what makes up your reality, is what makes up your situation. And this team's responded to all those adverse things exceptionally well to get to this point. And so there's all these little milestones and all these little steps that you need to take that require reflection. And I think that this is one that does, getting to the 60-win mark and being on the precipice of winning your most games in franchise history. They need one more win to be the winningest team in franchise history. Pretty good stuff.
March Madness is here, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's 200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories, and even who's cutting down the nets. With tournament games happening almost every day, there's always something exciting to bet on. The FanDuel app is simple to use, and when I win, I get paid instantly. No waiting around. You can also look at some futures, like for Major League Baseball. How about that? The most popular future bet in all of Major League Baseball. The Cincinnati Reds to hit their over on the win total. FanDuel has the Reds over under 79.5. My producer would like to mention that he has smashed this over, FYI. So visit FanDuel.com and get in on the college hoop action all tournament long.
The New York Knicks finally do what they're supposed to do against a bad team.
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast.
It's been a steady climb for this team. They got blown out by two of the worst teams in the league. They survived a team nearly another one of the worst teams in the NBA, nearly erasing a 33-point lead, partially because they chose to pull their best players. Thanks, Marcus Smart. And then tonight, they progressed to a fairly comfortable win after a bad defensive first half against a team that should be very good, but decided to trade away their generational Slovenian talent and have their other 7 best players get hurt in what seems like a curse. I don't know. But we are talking the Mavs having no answer for Karl Anthony Towns, OG's second half takeover, record-setting triple-doubles for both Kat and Josh Hart, and Tyler Kolek flashing again. I'll leave it to you. Where do we start this journey through the Knicks' first really good win in a little bit?
I mean, I guess first we could shout out the 2 records or noteworthy things in this game. So Karl Anthony Towns with 26 points, 12 rebounds, 11 assists, gets a triple-double. Josh Hart also 16 points, 12 rebounds, 11 assists. The 12 and 11 is kind of crazy that they both got that for their triple-doubles. And also both with 6s on the end of their point totals. Weird. But first pair of Knicks teammates in history to both get triple-doubles in the same game. So that was cool. And then Josh Hart sets the triple-double record, takes that from Clyde for a single season. He's also, I don't know exactly how close he is to the career one, but he's definitely threatening to get there sooner than later for Knicks career triple doubles. So props to Josh Hart for that.
Can I just say, Alex, did you love that Clyde on the broadcast slipped in? Only took 50 years to beat it. Like which I don't think was him being salty because he loves Josh Hart, but I just thought that was funny. Like some of the competitiveness is still in there.
Oh, definitely. And I mean, he even said at one point at the very end, I think maybe it was when Josh Hart grabbed the ball when it looked like he was gonna keep it for himself as like a memento for the game. I think Clyde slipped in another one of like, yeah, I'm happy for him, but whatever. I'm not happy about my 50-year record getting broken.
He was in rare form tonight. He was really good.
I love Clyde. He's so fun. I mean, him and Breen, it's just it's a treat. I mean, Clyde also just turned 82, which is crazy. So shout out to Clyde. Happy birthday to him. I think a little belated. I think it was last week, but either way, I mean, this game. Before we get into the individual players and whatever, the overall way that this game went is sort of what we were begging for in some of those other games, like the 2 games that they lost, where it was just like, yeah, okay, they kind of messed around in the first half and, to so to speak, they effed around, but they did not find out, thankfully. They kind of, la-di-da through the first half. Najee Marshall had like an out-of-body experience, which was a little concerning. It felt a lot like the Mamu Spurs thing for a minute, where it was just like, is this guy just going to go for like 50 points for no good reason? Like, this is crazy. But luckily he wasn't quite as rambunctious in the second half as he was in the first half. But, then the second half, they just kind of came out and said, no, we're the good team here. You guys are the bad team. I mean, it probably helped their case that I'm sure the Mavericks every single game right now are just exhausted by the time halfway through the third quarter comes around, thanks to the fact that they're running such a short rotation right now from having so many guys out. Although I guess they did play 9 guys in this game. So, they managed to put something together. But either way, just, the Knicks just kind of did what the good team should do and just said, no, okay, we're going to play defense. We're going to, blow you guys out of the water. They were up double digits by the end of the third quarter after going into halftime tied, which was annoying. The tied part, not the going up by double digits part, but then they just continued to smoke them in the fourth quarter and even managed to buy themselves like 4 minutes of garbage time. So that was cool too. You love seeing that. So yeah, I thought this was great. I mean, there was a lot of good play up and down the roster. Like, all the starters, I think, did well, all things considered. I mean, Campaign a little more quiet statistically than he was the other day, but certainly did the same type of stuff where he was, keeping the offense moving and got this, whatever. And then like Kolek off the bench was great. Landry Shamet was solid off the bench. Like, it was a real Kevin McCullough Jr. gets his first basket. Jalen Brunson first came back on the bench. Like, this was kind of just the ultimate feel good beatdown of a bad team. I very much enjoyed this game.
Yeah, it was a great vibes night, even though I was a little frustrated watching the defense in the first half. The way Tyler Kolek played was the cherry on top, and 10 assists in 19 minutes. He now has 17 assists to 0 turnovers and 37 minutes of total action, but we'll hit him later. Kevin McCullough Jr., his first NBA bucket on his first shot. Karl Anthony Towns was also his first ever Knick triple-double. I think you nailed it in that it was a get right game. I think I'm torn on whether to start with OG. 35 and 38 minutes is insane, but I'm going to start with screw it. I will start with OG Anunoby, because I thought him and Josh Hart together kind of turned this game on its head in the second half, where again, like, the Knicks were just giving up as much as they were getting. And some of that was Najee, just like, he went whatever was like 8 for 8 on floaters. Seemingly he made 11 of his first 12 shots at 23 points in 15 minutes. He actually tied a record for most field goals in a half against the Knicks, which is crazy given some of like Steph and Kobe, like some of the crazy performances in MSG. That's only since 1996, but still, that was a wild stat. Anywho, the way the Knicks just ramped up their defensive pressure in the second half, and like, I'll almost start that with Josh Hart over anyone. Like, my note for him at halftime was, is the knee still bothering him? This felt like the fourth game in a row, at least third out of 4, where like you just don't see him getting a rebound, pushing in transition, or flying in for offensive rebounds. And then he just like totally shifted the tenor of this game in the second half. Like, he made like coast to coast layup after 2 turnovers to finish the first half. Then Mikal hit a pull-up 2 off of a hard push, like very first play of the second, had another steal, hit ahead to OG Anunoby for a jam. Next play, OG had a really nice contest, got the rebound to Cat, and then Cat had a hit ahead to Hart up to Mikal for a right wing 3. That capped off a 17-5 run to start the second half. One more crazy play. This was like early fourth or late third, where the ball was tipped past midcourt, and Mikal Bridges saved it to Cat, and Cat just zipped it like 40 feet on a line. Like, Cat's passing was amazing all night with guys going back door, but that was the best one. 40 feet on a line to Hart, and OG just over and over again. I mean, everything for him, Alex, in the second half was basically like in transition, like poke away for a jam, transition corner 3, then another fast break jam. And there was like a point where OG was just like a shark smelling blood in the water. Like, he saw Christie doubled, falling out of bounds, and Powell was the only outlet. So he just shot in, tipped the ball away, ran it down after Cat like threw an outlet ahead to him, and then he made a layup as he fell down, had another Euro step between 2 defenders. Like, just like the way they were able to like turn Dallas over and get out and run, like that was the ball game. And it felt like, to your point, that was them saying like, all right, we're just better than you, and kind of laying it all on the table, as it were.
Yeah, it was nice to see OG kind of get back to the, like, put a cherry on top of like the recent renaissance again. Like, we saw him kind of fall off a little bit in like the Miami game, the San Antonio game, and then he had the point total against Charlotte, but like the efficiency wasn't quite there. And then these last 2 games, he's kind of gotten right back to where he left off, which, take the quality of opponent into consideration if you want, but like domination is domination. Like I like to see him go out there and just like physically impose his will, like getting inside, just dunking over dudes, getting out in transition, using the wingspan, getting the steals. I mean, the one that stood out to me was just one of those, like, it felt like early Dagger-esque. I think it was like towards the end of the third quarter when he just got the strip steal, easy rundown for a dunk. It's just like those plays are just such backbreakers, especially if you're facing a young team that's like where turnovers can stack up quickly and like mistakes can weigh on you more heavily as like a younger team. I felt like he did a really good job of, forcing the issue, and that one was just one of those steals that just kind of feels like a game buster. If it was like NBA Street or whatever, or Game Breaker, was that what they used to be called?
Yeah. Where you like the ball goes on fire and then you
right.
Oh, that's NBA. I'm thinking NBA Jam.
That's NBA Jam.
NBA Street. It has like the slow-mo cutscene where you do like the 720 dunk.
Yes, NBA Jam had that. NBA Street used to have, they called them Game Breakers, which was like you would bust out like a crazy like crossover move or whatever, and then that would open you up to go in and like dunk on someone and like break the backboard or whatever. It was a fun thing.
Those are so cool. Like the second the screen slows down, you're like, all right, let's go.
Yeah, basketball games used to be so much more fun. Take note, game developers. Take note, 2K.
Sorry, viewers who missed out.
Yeah. I'll write to former host James Marcita and see if he can green light a new NBA Street game at 2K Games. We'll figure it out. I think they tried it. It was terrible, but they can make another one. We'll figure it out. Anyway, before we get too far off the rails, we still got to talk about Karl Anthony Towns and how dominant he was in the first half. We talk about Josh Hart, and I thought this was kind of a nice return to form for him.